It's pretty obvious what streets are for. You need them to get from one place to another. And they also are needed as conduits for electricity, for gas, for cable, for water, for sewer, and for drainage. And they are part of what is sometimes called the public realm, shared spaces that belong to everybody. The shared space part is important. Walking down a well-designed, tree-lined street, like this one in Vancouver, should be a pleasant experience. Sometimes, in informally organized squatter settlements, when people come into an area and build for themselves, they want to use every scrap of land, and they don't leave enough space for streets. This example in Manila shows you what happens. It's hard to even walk around. You can see the electric wires have to be carried across the rooftops. People bring in water in containers, sewage disposal is a major problem, and there is little access for fire engines or other emergency vehicles. On the other hand, sometimes there can be too much space left for streets. This street in Regina, Saskatchewan, has been designed to maximize speed for traffic, but even if someone gives a big party, there's never going to be this kind of traffic that needs this much street. There's plenty of space for utilities, and actually the electric and telephone wires are underground, which should help create a high-quality public realm. There's a sidewalk, but you can see that this is not exactly friendly for pedestrians. There isn't much landscaping either. The public space is so unattractive that it looks like people have built walls around their houses so they don't have to look at the street, much less feel that they are connected to a public space. For years, the most influential voice at the table when a street was being planned came from traffic engineers, and they put speed and safety for cars and trucks ahead of other considerations. A lot of sidewalks were shaved down to narrow paths to make room for wider traffic lanes. Today, many people have agreed on a slogan, Complete Streets, to promote the idea of creating the best combination of spaces for walking, bicycles, cars, utilities, landscape, and drainage. Priorities for complete streets are different from the way streets have usually been designed, putting pedestrians and bicycles first, leaving room for green infrastructure, making sure there's space for transit on major streets, and then providing for cars, trucks, and servicing. These are concepts for cities and suburban centers. When you are on a major highway or a major country road, cars and other vehicles should still have priority. You will have noticed that we put green infrastructure high on the priority list for street space, just after pedestrians and bicycles. We've talked about green infrastructure before, during week 2, as a way to manage rainstorms by holding water in the ground rather than having it rush down the drains and into sewer systems and rivers. Having trees planted along the street counts as green infrastructure, but another important technique is what is called a drainage swale. Here's what a drainage swale can look like. It occupies about the same amount of space as a street tree, but because it's designed to collect water, it's lower than the sidewalk. Street trees often share space with the sidewalk, but that's not possible with a swale. As a result, swales take up a lot of street space, so they often work best outside dense city centers. Here's a plan for a typical 50-foot wide suburban street with a drainage swale. That's a little more than 15 meters. There's a little bridge mid-block so the pedestrians can get across the swale from the sidewalk to the street, as well as crossing at the ends of the street. You will notice that there's no room for a separate bicycle path. The theory here is that a small suburban street like this one, cars and bikes can share the traffic lanes. This diagram shows how you can fit most of the components of a complete street system, including bicycle lanes, into a 60-foot right-of-way that is a little more than 18 meters. However, everything is just a little bit smaller than would be ideal. Only 4 feet for the trees instead of 5, no street parking, no drainage swale, only 1 lane of traffic in each direction to allow for the planted central island. Of course, design always means making choices, and this is still a better alternative than giving street space to 2 parking lanes plus wider lanes for traffic. Here's a plan for part of Eglinton Avenue in Toronto, which is very complete, but the street is 36.5 meters wide. That's 120 feet. The designers have cut the width of all the traffic lanes to make room for ample sidewalks, landscaping on each side, plus the bicycle lanes. But you could argue that riding right next to a bus lane is not a very comfortable relationship for a bicycle. If you want bicycles to be really safe, they need to be clearly separated from cars by a curb, as on this street in Copenhagen. What's missing from this picture is green infrastructure. There's no landscaping at all, which is a design choice. The aesthetic of this part of Copenhagen is that the street space should all be hard surfaces, but using good quality materials. Notice that the streetlights are suspended from the buildings, which creates a simpler, less cluttered streetscape. There are many great examples of well-designed streets, like Main Street in Annapolis, Maryland, with its brick street and sidewalks and flower baskets and banners. Most of the technical difficulties in creating great streets have been solved somewhere. The only problem, as with so much of we talk about in this course, is making the exceptional become standard practice. In our next session, I will go on to describe how many cities around the world are recovering lost or forgotten urban spaces and turning them into productive and desirable places.